All right, we will call the February 8th, 2024 meeting of the Parker Planning Commission to order at 7 p.m. Please
All black.
stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
There's nothing on them right now.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call. Absent is Eric Franzen. Seated for Eric is Angela and Nick. And Eric R is seated for Nick. All other members present. Are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda, sir?
Mr. Chairman, there are not.
It's good to see you.
Likewise. You have the B team tonight. Here.
All right. Approval of the minutes. Are there any additions or deletions, corrections to the Planning Commission meeting minutes from the 25th of January, 2024?
Do we mention that they've been amended once in our packet?
No, you don't need to.
Okay. I move we accept the minutes. I second it.
It's been moved by Ruth Ann, seconded by Angela, that we approve the minutes from January 25th. I'll call the question. Angela?
Aye. Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Ileana?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Leland?
Aye.
Chair is aye, passes unanimously. Item number 6 is a public meeting. 6A, a bill for an ordinance to amend sections 13.04.100, 13.04.120, and 13.04.130 concerning natural medicine businesses, and to amend the Title 13 of the Parker Municipal Code by the addition of thereto of a new chapter 13.17 concerning regulation of natural medicine businesses in the town of Parker. We will open the hearing at 7:02. And Kelsey, you're on?
All right. Thank you so much for having me tonight, Commissioners. My name is Kelsey Hall, and I'm from the Town Attorney's Office. I'm stepping in for Jim Maloney tonight since this is his baby. So I'm here to talk to you tonight about a zoning ordinance regarding natural medicine. And so that is psychedelic substances, more commonly known as mushrooms, although there are some other natural substances that I had not heard of before, but that I have been learning about. So for some background for you, back in 2022, the voters passed Prop 122, which legalized the use, possession, growing, sharing, but not the sale of certain psychedelic substances, including mushrooms. In 2026, the state has the option to expand to these other natural plant-based psychedelic substances as well, but that's far from certain at this point. As codified, Prop 122 does allow the supervised use of these substances at certain licensed facilities if they are over 21, and we're calling them healing centers to be compliant with the statute. Under the Act, local governments are not allowed to outright ban the use of these psychedelic substances or these facilities generally, but they are allowed to regulate the time, place, and manner of these facilities, and that is what we are attempting to do with the ordinance in front of you this evening. Let's see. And then in 2023, we got another statute, and this is what sets up the regulatory regime for these psychedelic substances. So the state went beyond just talking about healing centers. It also is covering related businesses, so anything for cultivation, manufacture, and testing is also covered by this. Again, we cannot outright ban these, but we can regulate the time, place, and manner of the operation of these businesses within the town. The state did help us out, and it said if there is a zoning ordinance and these businesses are not allowed in a certain zone district, we won't even consider the license that's out. They also said if that the proposed location for these businesses is within 1,000 feet of a school or child care center, they would not issue the license. So what are we trying to do with this? We are trying to regulate the time, place, and manner of these businesses. And so for your consideration, we essentially have two buckets. We have these healing centers where the 21-year-olds and over can go and be supervised while they are using the substances. And then we have all of the other related businesses, so testing, cultivation, manufacturing, all that. So healing centers are going to be probably the more regulated ones here. We start with our time. So for healing centers, they would be allowed to operate between the hours of 8 and 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. We did not touch the hours of operation for those other businesses because they're only allowed under the proposed ordinance in the light industrial district. And so we don't traditionally regulate the hours of operation of businesses in that district, but we do in business and commercial where the healing centers would be located. As far as place, like I said, the healing centers would be in commercial and business. This is similar to other businesses like breweries and bars where we do traditionally regulate those time frames where they can operate. It's also being treated similarly to like a medical office in the statute, so we felt like that was consistent. Everything else is in light industrial. Additionally, both types are subject to that 1,000-foot limitation away from schools and child cares, and then the ordinance would also add another 1,000-foot limitation away from any sort of residential dwelling unit, and that's, single family all the way up to multifamily. And then manner. So all of these businesses would be subject to the requirements on the screen. The activities would be indoors. They would have to be screened, sort of like what you see with marijuana stores these days. The businesses would need to be properly illuminated so they're not dark and trying to draw on that criminal element. We would make sure that the odors do not go beyond the confines of the business if there are any. Storage would need to be in a permanent facility. Any byproducts would need to be secured, and they can't use any hazardous materials or otherwise violate our building codes. So that is the ordinance in a nutshell. Staff does recommend approval. This is our best way to regulate this use when we are otherwise not permitted to outlaw it by statute. So I'm here for any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions for Kelsey?
I have a couple. The questions I have are about the time that we've selected for the hours of operation. Mm-hmm. Do we have a limitation on time for other mental health services?
That I am not sure. John, do you?
We do not.
I did not think so. And it seems to me that if this is a mental health service and it is a health center, mm-hmm. and it does provide care for people, and it, from what I have learned about it, because I too have learned more about it as we've moved through this process as a state.
Yes.
It seems to me that having the hours restricted to 8 to 5 Monday through Friday cuts out a whole lot of people who would benefit from this treatment, including veterans, including people who are having to work like a couple of different jobs, and maybe they'll only have a Saturday available, or maybe only be available to come after the close of business at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. So I would like to see, and I think unless and until it is amended to change the hours so that it's more in keeping, so it actually provides a service. Mm-hmm. I don't think I can support this the way it's currently written. The thing is that the ordinance appears to be written as if, like, we would really rather not have this horrible stuff in our town. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really the wrong tack to take. I would suggest that a better way to look at this is a new form of medicine. We're all learning how it works, and that we should give it a chance and let the folks who are coming in who are licensed to do this, and if we're going to trust the licensing process, let's trust the fact that they're going to be they're going to be professionals in the area, and they're going to know how to do this. I hate the idea of thinking that there's some vets out there that could use this and they wouldn't be able to get in between 8 and 5. It's just, I think it's unreasonable, mm-hmm. that level of restriction.
Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that.
Other questions for Kelsey?
Can you describe a little bit about what actually they do in that building? I know I don't look like I'm from the 70s, but I remember the mushrooms, I remember a lot of that. And if this is a psychedelic product, that if somebody goes in, I know that it would take 5, 6, 7 hours for you to come down off that psychedelic. So are they going to release these people onto the street? Are they going to have a room that they're going to stay in while they're high on the psychedelic? How is that all going to work?
I'm not entirely sure. I would need to look at the regulatory statute and any sort of regulations that have come out under that regime. That was not really the focus of that research, but I could certainly get back to you. My understanding is that this is intended to be a safe place where people can experience these psychedelic substances and have someone who is there to take care of them. I think it's sort of like the same idea as a safe injection site where someone can go and make sure that someone is watching them.
I would draw a distinction there. The idea is that there's a guide who helps a person work through the psychological issues that they're talking about or that they experience while they're doing it. It's very different from a safe injection site, which is provided in order to keep folks who are addicted to drugs having clean needles and having a place where if there's an overdose issue that they can be taken care of. So I think that's a very poor analogy to choose.
My apologies.
That's okay.
No,
wanna
I
share.
appreciate the feedback. I'm still learning about this too.
Sure,
so
I get that.
appreciate learning about it more.
Kelsey, have you or your office done any research on what other municipalities are proposing?
I am not sure. Like I said, I am stepping in for Mr. Maloney, so I can't say whether he has looked at other municipalities or not.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this is the way that the town of Parker staff would propose that the town of Parker handle it regardless of what other municipalities are doing.
I don't know if I have enough information to make that characterization. Again, was not with Jim whenever he was drafting this proposed ordinance, so it's possible that he was looking at other places. I'm not aware of what a lot of other cities are doing right now. I know quite a few are taking no action, but as far as the other regulations, this is still pretty new, so I'm not aware of others yet.
I've got one more question for
Absolutely.
you. And this is the way that I read the staff report and the proposed ordinance is that if the ordinance gets put into place before actual facilities are built, it gives the town of Parker better control over where those facilities are located. Is that correct?
That is correct. If there happen to be any facilities in place right now that, of course, meet that 1,000-foot requirement under the statute, then they would be grandfathered in.
Thank you.
Would this start, I'm reading here that it says that these places would start in 2026.
That would be for the additional substances beyond the mushroom psychedelics that are available right now.
But we don't know what other kind of substances they're talking about.
I do. You will have to forgive my pronunciation because these are very long words for me. I've got, dimethyltryptamine, ibogaine, and mescaline would be the other three. And then currently we allow psilocybin and psilocin.
Because I think mescaline, that has to deal with the mushrooms themselves, the main product of them, if I remember right.
I could not tell you
It's been a
specifically.
long time. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay. As we look to get feedback from the community, as we open it up to public comment, we will open it up to public comment. And seeing no public, we will close the public comment portion of the hearing. Any further questions? Okay, commissioner discussion? We will close, continue. Now I'm getting myself confused.
To close the public hearing.
Yeah, we'll close the public hearing. And at 7:14, and we'll have commissioner discussion.
I would like to propose that we vote to continue this. I think that we need to do a little more research before we could actually bring something forward that would would certainly be something I could support. But I think we need to do a little more research and have a little bit more idea of this, other than let's make this the tightest possible restriction because we don't want those icky things in our town. I think this is a valid form of medicine, and I think that this ordinance does not respect that, the way it's currently written.
Certainly. What are the things, or what kind of information would you like to see?
Well, I would like to see, I would like to see an expansion of the hours. I think the issue that Leland brought up of if someone is under treatment, how long does a treatment last? And are we creating hours that would permit someone to come in for treatment, have that treatment, and be able to leave and be able to drive home, or get driven home, or whatever they need to do. This is not, there's a lot of feeling that people have that this is sort of like, an excuse to go get high or just, freak out or go on a trip. And it really has very legitimate medical purposes that have medical papers written about them and that sort of thing. And so I would encourage us to do a little more research, have a little more information on what kind of restrictions we're putting on the practice, because I think we have people in this community that would like to be able to avail themselves of it.
John?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Commissioner Nelson, thank you for the comments. I respect the position. I do have concern that if the commission were to continue this matter to either a date certain or uncertain, right now the town's trying to strike a balance between complying with state law and ensuring its municipal code aligns with state code. And then from the planning perspective, boy, that's really loud.
It is.
Strike a balance with this very new use that is required by state mandate through Prop 122. My concern is that it's so new to the state of Colorado as a permitted legal use and activity, that the information that would be available to the staff and to the town about how these practices and these operations work would be very limited, and I think of little to no utility in terms of informing this ordinance. What I'd like to point out, and this commission has seen it before and done a very fine job evaluating and commenting and deciding on ordinances. This is the town's first effort at an ordinance on this state mandated use and activity. Again, trying to align code with state law, which is always an important driver. Right now, we don't have that. And then striking a balance as to use. And I think in the Community Development Department, we think we've struck the right balance, but I have to tell you, we don't know because it's so new. And I take your comment, Commissioner Nelson, very seriously. This ordinance, like any ordinance, if we get additional feedback from operators and practitioners, as well as patients, once this starts to really operate, both in the town, in the county, and in the state, we can always come back and have a discussion with the Planning Commission and the Town Council about, is the ordinance too restrictive, let's say on hours, the 8 to 5 p.m. hours. We're happy to do that. We've done that in the past. The one that always comes to mind for me, at least, is the town's prairie dog management ordinance, which was novel for the town and Douglas County when the commission heard it and recommended it, and the town council adopted it. We've subsequently amended that ordinance at least twice based on feedback from the public, property owners, and businesses. And I'm not saying these two are the same thing. They're completely different. But the point I'm trying to make is that right now, we don't have that alignment between municipal code and state law, and we don't have some planning tools here. I respect your opinion that maybe it's too restrictive, but I'd urge the commission to at least consider this ordinance as proposed with comments if you think it's too restrictive, to pass those along to the town council. And certainly, this ordinance could be amended if we had practitioners in this area, in this field, say to us that they can't reach their clients or their patients because they have to shut down at 5 p.m. And we would certainly bring that for conversation if that was what we were hearing. But there's not a lot of information, at least in the state of Colorado, about how how this works on a legal basis. I just fear if the commission tables this or continues it, that we'd have very little information to come back with that would be of utility and responsive to your comments and questions. Thank you.
Other comments?
I guess I had a question that came up from that. Has there been any interfacing with potential operators? And has there been like a listening session with anyone who might be interested in opening a business or healing center?
No, we have no knowledge of any existing legal operators within the town of Parker or in the Parker vicinity. I can't say that they don't exist, but we don't have that knowledge at this point, again, since this is still fairly new, right? The proposition passed in 2022. The state promulgated additional rules and regulations in 2023. Here we are at the beginning of 2024.
I was just curious if there had been conversations with like, oh, these are the hours we're proposing. Does that align with what you would think would be needed or not?
It's so new and novel. If this were a different use, let's say if this was an ordinance regulating osteopathic care, we have osteopaths in practice in the town of Parker and the Parker area. We could go have those conversations. We don't have any legal operators that we're aware of at this point in the town of Parker in this field, in this use.
Could we continue this to a date certain, say, the next meeting that we're scheduled to have, and in that time, possibly have time for town council to contact the substantial group of people that have done the research and help move this bill through our Colorado State Legislature in order to get this additional information? That's a source that I think they would, it's an ample source. But to a date certain, so that we're not just letting it hang out there. I agree with you, John, that we don't want to do that. But I do think we need to have a little more information before we just slap a Band-Aid on it. That's my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond? Commissioner Nelson, I appreciate that. I do think if the commission were to not take a vote tonight and wish to continue the matter, I think continue it within a limited time frame to a date certain, 2 or 4 weeks out, for example, with a request or direction to staff to do some research. The council would not do this research, but you can certainly ask us,
Yes.
me, Kelsey, Jeff, Bryce, to do some research. And we will certainly, we'll do as much research as we can and come back to you with that information if that's what the commission wishes. It would be important for us at the staff level to know to have some kind of clarity about what issue you'd like us to research or ask about, or what question you'd like us to ask in hopes of getting more information. So I think you take a motion to do something this evening, I think it would be useful to Kelsey and me if you could go through the questions you may have that you'd like us to try and find answers to, or the issues you're concerned about that you'd like us to research in the hopes of having more information.
Okay.
I
Kelsey-
guess,
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. You're the boss.
well, I'm not the boss. I'm just trying to move things along. Other comments or,
I'd like to make a comment. For those of you that don't know, I've been in clinical research for 27 years. I've spent almost half my life doing it. There is very little research in this. Leland, you may have experienced something in the 70s. That is not the way it's done now. It is very much of a controlled environment. It is a manufactured environment, and it is done with a very careful amount of either a single ascending dose or multiple ascending dose. You're not just given something and said, here, go get high. It's not the way. This has been very passively done in 2022. I applaud Colorado for doing it because I have a nephew who's benefiting from this, who has PTSD from serving in the military. That's the first point of contact where this has been done. I think we should set a date for 2 weeks. I doubt very much, gentlemen, and to the planning person here, you're not going to find anything because there isn't a lot to be had. The government has not been funding any of this. This has all been done either privately or with volunteers that sign an informed consent, and there isn't data being collected yet. The first country to actually do this is Australia. The US is way behind. So I'm in favor of passing this, and yes, maybe ask questions, and you could amend it, because we have an obligation, whether it's 8 to 5 or 9 to 9, that can always be changed. If you're looking for a needle in a haystack, and it's just simply not going to be there. Trust me. I can go to government websites that you don't have access to and tell you it's not there.
So what you're recommending that we do tonight is go ahead and recommend passage of this with instruction for additional, or should we ask them to find additional information and vote on it in 2 weeks? What is your thought on that,
My
Ileana?
recommendation is we pass it with the agreement that it will be amended accordingly as more information is gathered. And you're going to be gathering information for a long time.
You know what I think about, Ruth Ann, is perhaps I'm in agreement with Ileana that I think that we should put the ordinance in place, particularly because I don't want anything grandfathered in. I do think that in some cases, people have to go out of their way to get medical care during regular business hours, and that would be the same for this procedure as it would be for other procedures. And yes, there are probably people who would get shut out by this. In the Parker area, that's probably not that many, and there may possibly be other municipalities that do not envision the same restrictions. All of that said, I think that perhaps we could consider amending the ordinance, perhaps requesting an additional review of the enacted ordinance in, say, perhaps 1 year's time or 2 years' time, whenever you think it might be appropriate, when more data may be available. Just to be certain that there is an actual review period scheduled, if you know what I mean.
I guess in the short term, I don't want to send staff down a rat hole, as Ileana says, where there is little or no information. I don't think that's a good use of staff's time when, as we know, because these come to us frequently, we can amend these. The staff can bring an amendment. Once we have somebody that's interested in that, then you'll have your feedback loop a little more about what might be needed in terms of hours and that kind of thing. But I agree with Jane that I don't want something grandfathered in because we drug our feet. But I said, if, you know, I know little to nothing about this, and but I think it is important to get in front of it and to come into compliance, as John said, with state law.
So there's an alternative motion that's available to us where we would list a condition that we would recommend approval with a couple of conditions.
And what
I
might
could,
those be?
I could support something like that as long as it included something like what Jane said, with the condition that it'd be reviewed, I guess annually, unless somebody came forward and said, this is a real issue for us. But I'd like to have it reviewed at least annually for the first 2 years to make sure that it is meeting whatever requirements are needed in order to make sure that this is a viable location for people to open up this kind of business. I don't want us to be shutting people out. We just, a couple weeks ago, we did the thing for the tech center, you know, and it was like, well, we want to make sure we have this data overlay because we want to make sure that people know that we are a place where you can do tech. Well, I would like this to be a place where people know that they can come for health care. We have a wonderful hospital system that's part of Parker. We have a lot of good medical facilities, and I think this falls right along with that. And I think having the expectation it'll be a professionally run business is important, but I'd like to see it reviewed then. So I would be willing to move the alternate motion to approve, subject to it being reviewed on an annual basis for the next 2 years to make sure that the time restrictions are not overly burdensome. Does that seem like a good compromise?
I think that makes sense, especially with how new it is. I think it deserves to be reviewed on, a set timeline, just so we can make sure we take the learnings from the prior year or two and make sure we enact it accordingly.
Because it's new, is there any way in the future that if someone does decide they want to open up something here in Parker, that we can bring them before the board and get some of our questions answered?
Well, that's something I think staff would do, Leland.
And I think the point is staff could bring an amendment to, proposed amendment to this ordinance at any time. And so the only reason that Planning Commission would be adding that condition is so that as a Planning Commission representing the citizens of the town of Parker, we would ensure that would happen as opposed to leaving it to staff's discretion, which I think is the question.
Yeah. I think your idea is a good one, Jane.
Comments? John, would that be burdensome to the staff to have a kind of a timeline to review?
We can certainly do that. I think that, if I may be so bold, that's a reasonable, I think, comment and request, and at the staff level, we have the ability to, let's say, 1 year out, if town council were to approve this ordinance, 1 year out from that town council approval, do an update to the planning commission, start there, and also do that at year 2. We're certainly equipped to do that, and I think that's a thoughtful comment.
You ready for a motion?
Sure.
I move the Planning Commission recommend Town Council approve an ordinance to amend the Parker Municipal Code regarding natural medicine healing centers and businesses with the following condition, that code will be reviewed on an annual basis 1 year out from the passage by Town Council for 2 years after the initial passage of the code.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Ruth Ann, seconded by Eliana, that the Planning Commission recommend Town Council approve an ordinance to amend the Parker Municipal Code regarding natural medicine healing centers and businesses subject to the following condition, that the code will be reviewed on an annual basis for each year on the date following passage for 2 years. So we will call the question. Angela?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Ileana?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Leland?
Yeah, aye.
Chair is aye. It passes unanimously. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for putting up with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Any items for Planning Commission, Jeff or John?
Sure. As the Planning Commission probably knows, the staff held the most recent community open house for the land development ordinance modernization, 2 days ago at the Pace Center. I came late, but I did see Commissioner Nelson there, so I want to thank you.
Commissioner Jane was there.
And Commissioner Lane was there, so I want to thank the Planning Commission members who took time out of your evening to attend the open house. We had decent attendance for that kind of project and some good discussion, as well as some comments and concerns that we're reviewing and evaluating. And that's why we do open houses, right? Both as a commission and as a staff. We want to see our community show up, and they did. So I consider that a success. I also, not knowing if Bryce has updated you, wanted to just let you know, file this under coming attractions. The town council and the town manager's office would like to schedule joint dinners between the town council and town boards and commissions this year, as opposed to a joint meeting, which, speaking only for staff, is no fun. But we're talking about a joint dinner between the council and town boards and commissions, including the planning commission. Certainly, Bryce and I have advocated for that and given our support. We think that would be a terrific thing for the council to meet with the commission over dinner, break bread, have some conversations about what you do, but just what's going on in the town and anything else. We don't have a date yet, but as we hear more from the town manager's office, we'll update you, and we've got our fingers crossed that that will come to fruition this year. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a move to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
I second.
It's been moved by Ileana, seconded by Ruth Ann, that we adjourn. Angela,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Ileana, Ruth Ann.
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
Leland, chair is aye, passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you all.